are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, bringing you the latest news and commentary on baseball.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out! The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball!
Hockey, college football,
The Big Ten championship lies on a measurement.
Did he get it? No! He didn't get it! Penn State home!
They brought back the fun, they brought back the excitement, and now they've brought back a Big Ten championship. The Penn State Nittany Lions are Big Ten champions.
and the NFL.
1:16 to go, 41 yards. Cardona to out. Skowski. 6 titles, 9 appearances. How about the drive to go close it out? You see Tom Brady. Enjoy him, folks. You're never, ever going to see it again. Not in our lifetime. Nope. So here's Zerline, part 1, 48 yards. And we'll end it. No good. The rain continues. Yes, it does. They've got to snap it one more time. The ball will end up in the hands of Tom Brady on the kneel down. And there it is. The dynasty continues.
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, hello and welcome back. It's been a while. Well, I should say that only if you don't watch the Bulldog Hour, because welcome back a week later if you've been watching us do our high school football show covering the Wilson Bulldogs from West Lawn, Pennsylvania. And if you're not into that kind of thing, or you're not from the area and just, couldn't really care what's going on with those high school athletes, we are back for the first time in, the show in general in nearly 4 months. But the last time that I did a show on this platform was a Friends Cast, and you weren't here. So It's actually been a full 4 months since we've been together to talk sports on the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. And here we are for episode 285, closing in on 8 years of the show and 9 years of the show and 300 episodes, which will happen in 2020.
That's crazy.
Yeah, new decade. We'll start our march towards 400 shows with the new decade. So, welcome back, everyone. And I'm Joe Mays. This is Justin Raffoff. We'll be talking NFL this evening, a little pro football action. We haven't talked about it since we concluded our preview episodes way back in July. And, a lot has happened since then. Almost every team has played at least 9 games, or maybe every team has played 9 games. We're on to 10 games now here in Week 11. Finally got a few more teams on bye that hadn't had their bye yet this week. But I believe 28 games happening. There's 28 teams playing, 14 games happening here in Week 11. And, some of the things that we expected to happen have happened, and as always, a few things, we swung and missed, and we're going to cover all of that tonight.
Yeah, we definitely were right on it with some of them, and some of them we missed significantly, but I feel like we're not alone.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're not the only one that is happening to. Now, we're not in our normal time slot. We usually start the show at 8:30, so all of the games, save for Sunday and Monday night, have concluded, whereas right now we actually have a lot of games happening. The early slate is, I think, every game's in the fourth quarter, and then we have a few games at the 4:30 window, followed by Sunday and Monday night. So we'll try to keep you updated if you're not watching what's happening in all those games. A few of them close, especially Minnesota has clawed their way back to just a 4-point differential with the Broncos, and Dallas and Detroit has been a good one, but that's pretty much it. All the other games are at least 2 possession differences, including Jets, Redskins, Saints, Buccaneers, Bills, Dolphins, Jaguars, Colts, Falcons, Panthers, and perhaps the most surprising result, Texans, Ravens. Baltimore is all
Yeah.
over Houston.
Not, like, I don't think it would be at all surprising to people that Baltimore would be up. I mean, not necessarily consensus, but, two good teams. And yet, man, 34-0.
34-0
after
is
their
a
last few weeks.
beatdown.
And honestly, you can go back. They've won 5 in a row and are going to win 6 in a row. And
beating what were considered the top or contenders in the AFC.
yeah, so it could be very interesting. They're sitting at 7-2, like we said, about to be 8-2. They look like they're for real.
Yeah,
and
for
who
sure.
else looks like he's for real as part of that? Lamar Jackson. And
Yeah.
man, I think so. I think he's had 16 starts now, and the Ravens.
I don't, if this is 16 or last week was 16, I'm not sure.
I believe last week was 16, but I could be wrong. It would just, even if it wasn't, if it's counting this week because they're going to win.
Right.
The Ravens are 13-3 in his first 16 starts, which, and the way he's doing it, like some of the runs he had today, just unbelievable. And he's avoiding the big hits. Like, it's, he's not a bruising runner, but he's a big guy. He's fast, but man, just a flick of the wrist, he can bomb the ball too. So yeah, he's developing. And honestly, you figure he's a season into starting, right? Like that's basically what we're
he's
saying.
1 year
one
into it,
season
right?
into starting. There's reason to believe he's gonna continue to get better.
Yeah, I mean the only thing, and I don't mean to be contradictory or pessimistic because I have no problem with Lamar Jackson. I was a little, from a draft perspective, thinking, oh wow, okay, the Ravens are taking first round gamble on someone that has looked really good in college, but we haven't seen his style of play always translate long term. Because we've seen guys like Robert Griffin, or even if you want to go way back to Michael Vick, who had up and down success in the league. But Robert Griffin fell off. It's funny now he's his backup in Baltimore.
They have that Heisman package, which is awesome.
But yeah, it's fun to. I mean, Lamar Jackson is an incredibly fun player to watch play.
Right.
So for his sake, and now that Ray Lewis is gone, I don't have too much ill will against the Baltimore Ravens. So, okay, have fun, especially because Trace McSorley is there as their emergency quarterback, their third string guy who he earned that roster spot through training camp and his play. And wouldn't it be fun to have him be active and have them play all three quarterbacks at one time?
Can you imagine? You could line him up. Like, put RG3 out wide and Trace.
Well, you could put Trace out wide. They were possibly going to play him at safety. That's what a lot of people were expecting when he went to Penn State. And, he interviewed throughout the draft process. People were asking, can we run you through receiver drills? Can you run you through defensive back drills? And, he eventually caved and did so, and he landed with the Ravens and proved that he belonged in the NFL. Right. But I'm just be so much fun to see him be active and have him, RG3 and Lamar Jackson all on the field at the same time. But hey, we'll see if Lamar Jackson and the Ravens can keep it up. To me, they're a minor surprise this year. They're doing better than we expected. They won the division
last year, but we kind of thought they'd come back.
Well, everyone was hot and heavy on the Browns, and we didn't buy that at all.
No.
And that prediction, we're looking like geniuses.
Yeah.
Like, we're looking very good on our Browns.
Now, the Browns could turn it around here, but, it's hard. This week, even if you take out this week, because they played on Thursday night, and that was a circus. But if you take out this week, what about the Browns has made you think, you know what? I think they got it figured out. I think they're going to be a model of consistency over the last month and a half of the season and make the playoffs. Now, this schedule's set up nicely for them, and they have lots of things so that they very well could, but it's not like they've done anything this year to make you think, oh, you know what? I think they really got it together now.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting to watch kind of how that unfolds.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Because they're without their best player now. We shall see.
Yeah, we will see. We kind of touched on the AFC North a little bit already, so let's continue there. We talked about the Ravens. Maybe a minor surprise. They're doing better than we expected. We still thought that they would challenge for the playoffs.
But the way they're doing it is definitely unexpected.
Definitely way higher than anything we had expected, for sure.
Right.
Steelers, They're 5-5. They look bad against the Browns Thursday night, but they're doing it with a beat-up team and the second or third string, depending on how you want to look at it, quarterback in Mason Rudolph. And their defense has been playing really well. Offense sometimes leaves a lot to be desired. James Conner's been beat up this year, and they just haven't been that same explosive team that we had expected, especially when Big Ben was under center. But at 5-5, they've overcome enough. I mean, they're disappointing and below where we expected them to be, but I think when the circumstances change, I think they're doing okay.
Yeah.
Browns, no. People expect them to win double-digit games and make the playoffs, probably win the AFC North.
They have to win out to get the double-digit.
Yeah, we were both very pessimistic about that. I think we thought they'd be good.
They're okay, but they're not. The NFL has shown this over and over and over again that just accumulating the most talent does not necessarily equate to automatic wins.
Right.
It helps. To say it doesn't help would be foolish. And honestly, the Rams did a little bit of this a few years ago. They accumulated through free agency a ton of big guys, and they had some success with that. Now they fell short of their ultimate goal last year,
right?
And honestly, the year before. But the Browns went out and got big name guys at a ton of positions, and honestly, I don't know that you could say at this point that they're any better off than they were last year.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's kind of hard to figure out because I think they're better than they were last year. You know what I mean? I think they're better, but it's hard to say that with a ton of confidence that they're actually absolutely better than they were last year.
Right.
I don't know. It's just a weird spot, but I think we nailed that one. That they're fine, and they could go on a run here, and they're going to have some interesting games down the stretch. But it's tough because they have so much more talent than the Steelers. But I kind of view them and the Steelers as in the same boat. As there's a lot of toss-ups here and there, and they need a lot of things to go their way, but in neither one of them being successful would really surprise me. I anticipate the Browns finishing ahead of the Steelers at this point in the season. If I'm looking from here on out, I think the Browns have a better second half here than the Steelers will, but I don't know that it's going to be enough. Although the AFC is kind of just muddled after the top one or two. You just kind of get a lumping in there, but it's all going to come down to in 2 weeks, basically Thanksgiving weekend through the end, who gets hot and healthy.
Yep.
And
we see it every year.
And I don't see the Steelers getting hot enough. Maybe.
Yeah, we'll see.
The thing there is they can't. All right, so everybody knew the passing game wasn't going to be what it was before when you had all the studs out top. James Washington has been a disappointment. Was it Moncrief that they had? No.
Yeah, he's gone now. They let him go.
Yeah, they let him go because he couldn't catch a cold. They had all that stuff, that wasn't working. But then James Conner has been really underwhelming as well. And now can't stay on the field. And I like James Conner, but I think they were really banking on having the run game going because that would have set up having the guys like Juju and, James Washington, some of those other guys would have been better suited. Oh, also having your franchise and, your franchise quarterback back there was probably was one of the key things as well. So we'll see how it goes. I feel like I said, I feel like the Browns will finish the season better than the Steelers will. However, I'll be honest, and we've been on this for a while. Maybe not this one specifically, but I think the Steelers and their stability with Mike Tomlin is a huge thing right now, huge. And if he can get them to finish anywhere near 500, honestly, he won't win it at that. If they make the playoffs, he has a shot. But potential coach of the year, when you talk about you lose. Now, I know Le'Veon Bell didn't play for them last year, but they lost in this offseason. They would have lost Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and you lose Big Ben, and James Conner has been out and missed some time,
Right.
And you had all that other stuff, and then you make if they were to be able to make the playoffs, that would be pretty crazy. But yeah, I still think it's the Ravens' division to win. They're a few games clear of everyone there.
They're about to be 3 games up,
right,
with their dismantling of Houston and
Pittsburgh and Cleveland are both in the wild card discussion. I think Cleveland, it sets up better for them. I'm not convinced that they're really worthy of it right now. See me in another month. If they can string together some wins,
right, that's
great. But you look at it, they're 2-3 over their last 5, and I think that includes though they've won their last 2. So,
well, so that's the AFC North. Let's quick look at the AFC East and compare it to what we talked about at the beginning of the year. I don't know that there's too much different from what we discussed at the beginning of the year. You have the Patriots on top, 8-1. The only loss being to the Ravens. They play our Eagles here in about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
You looking forward to that rematch, that Super Bowl rematch from 2 years ago?
No.
No.
I mean, I really shouldn't be all that worried about it because the Patriots are the better team. I feel like the Eagles are right in the middle. They're in the a muddle that is the NFC East and NFC, honestly, the wild card race there. But, the Patriots are the favorite here. But again, you look at it, I'm not the Patriots, we know what we're going to get. They're going to win the East easily. Although I say that, it would be interesting if the Eagles could beat the Patriots today. They'd only be one game up on Buffalo.
Because they're up by 16 now on the Dolphins.
Right.
So I think there is a disappointing team in the AFC East, but a few weeks ago I think people would have pointed to the Dolphins, and they're going to be 2-8, and the Jets are going to be 3-7. Right. But the Jets had expectations entering this year. Now I'm not saying they expected to win the division. But they expected to challenge for
there were people who were jumping on them
spot.
to be on the second best team in the division.
Yeah.
And you look at it, they're bad. Now, if they're bad, how bad is Washington? That's a different discussion. But you look at it, you look at teams for new head coaches. I mean, I feel like if you're the Dolphins, at least right now, I feel like, hey, I like what Brian Flores is doing because he is winning despite the front office giving him hurdle after hurdle in order to be competitive. The front office couldn't have made it more difficult to be competitive. I think we can agree on that. And yet he's still playing competitive games now. And he's got guys that are playing competitive and they're building. So they've got a ton of draft capital, not just this year, but for the next couple years. I like where they sit. I know it's ugly. They're sitting there at 2-7, about to be 2-8. It's not ideal, and it's not. But you got to think there aren't necessarily quick fixes. We just talked about that. Going out and signing every free agent is not necessarily the answer.
No, and that's not what they're going to do.
Right. So they're going to build through the draft, and then, and I believe they have an owner that'll do this. When they have built through the draft, if they can do that successfully,
find one or two
then
pieces.
You find the supplemental pieces through the free agency, and now you're talking about a team that's competing. Oh, and we've talked about this for probably way too long, but it's got to happen at some point. Can you time that with
a young quarterback developing?
Well, and I'm saying with the Patriots starting over,
right?
Basically, losing a quarterback and or coach.
People talking about this coinciding with NFL reshuffling as a team moves to London. The rumor was the Chargers were going to move to London, and then they were going to have to reorganize. They're going to have to move a team from the AFC to, or they're going to have to move the Chargers to probably the AFC East instead of the AFC West, and they're going to move stuff, and the Dolphins are going to leave the AFC East. And I was like, oh, great. As soon as the New England dynasty is ending in the next, 2 to 5 years, which I feel like we've been saying for the last 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll believe it when I see it. However,
the Dolphins will be leaving and not having to play them twice a year just in the time that ends. But, yeah, so, I mean, Miami was incredibly disappointing the first 2 months of the season, but after we did our show, where I think we pegged them for around 5 wins, I think 4 to 6
so.
maybe, like
Yeah.
somewhere in there. Because I was like, they're not going to be as bad as everyone thought. Well, then they like really
had the fire sale.
Yeah, then they had a
Yeah.
fire sale, and I was like, oh boy, they're going to have some issues. And they looked awful the first month. Then you could see things changing. They only lost to Washington because they gambled and tried to go for 2 to win the game.
And no problem with that. When
Right,
you're in this spot.
right
Like,
when you're already 0-5 at the time or whatever
right,
it was.
you're not playing for a playoff
who
spot. You're
cares?
playing to just win.
Right.
You play to win.
And
the
they
game.
tried it. It didn't work. We saw it in local high school football. It worked for Nazareth over Parkland, though,
I saw
in
that.
overtime Friday evening. So, sometimes you gamble, you go for the win, you don't get it. We saw it years ago when Springford came to Wilson in double overtime. They could have kicked the extra point and forced triple overtime, but they went for the win. Wilson stopped them. It was a great game.
Yeah.
Great game.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Sometimes it goes
Classic.
away, sometimes it doesn't. But the Dolphins are going to be 2-8 after the loss to Buffalo today. The Jets are going to jump and be 3-7, but Miami still has a game against the Jets, who they already beat once. They also have a game against the Bengals, who are, we weren't expecting them to be good this year, but probably not 0-9 awful.
Right.
But
As long as the Dolphins lose on December 1st, I'm good with them winning it.
as long as they only win the rest of the year is on December 1st, I'm good. No, I still expect Miami to win 4 or 5 games.
I think so.
And that they're
Yeah.
at 2-8. They
Yeah.
have 6 games left. I think they can win 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
I really do. And I know they have another one against the Patriots, but I was hoping they could maybe string a 3-game winning streak together here and beat the Bills today, but that's not going to happen.
An interesting thing where the Bills will be, the Bills are about to be 7-3. If they can go 500 the rest of the way out, they're going to be in the playoffs, you know? And I think they play the Cowboys next week. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's a big game. But you look at it, all right, so you have the Dolphins, Jets, and Bengals in the 2 divisions we've talked about, all with first-year head coaches. Mm-hmm. And
which one are you most happy about?
oh my gosh, of those 3, the stock is the highest for the Dolphins.
Right.
And it's not close. I'm not completely sold that the Jets are in a terrible spot. Their biggest problem is that the guy who was running the team that owns stuff is now an ambassador somewhere and is not running the team, and is just because they're family. Literally, you can do this when you own teams and stuff. That's not the issue. But when you just say, "Hey, brother, who doesn't know anything about running a football team, you run the team because I'm gonna be overseas
Right.
doing other stuff."
Yeah.
And that's not working out real well. Imagine that. Imagine that's not the best way to run your organization. But it's just one of those. I feel like the Jets aren't terrible because while I'm not the biggest on Sam Darnold, I think he can be good enough. He shows flashes, and I feel like you don't know yet with him.
Yeah.
That's what I should say. I'm not
Right.
sold that he's the guy. I'm not sold that he's not the guy.
Yeah.
But the Bengals, man, what's going on there? They're terrible.
They don't seem
and you
to-
had a questionable coaching hire to begin with.
Right, people
You
were
just
wondering
hired a
about
guy who is coming from a system that also looks like they might be figured out now out in LA. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's not the best thing. And surprisingly, the Bengals of those 3 are also just the organization is pretty much a joke.
Right.
So,
Yeah. It hasn't been great. That's for sure. Now AFC South is getting interesting because Houston's about to drop to 6-4. The Colts are about to improve to 6-4. The Titans, I believe, have a bye this week, and the Jaguars are losing and going to drop to 4-6. So they'll be 2 games out with 6 to play. But I think we said at the beginning of the year that the AFC South was going to be competitive. And, well, it's shaping up to be that way as all 4 teams are not out of it, still in it. I hate to discount the Titans because of the way they looked against the Chiefs last week, but I still think this comes down to I think the Texans are the best team in that division,
yes.
but they have had some head-scratching losses. Not that losing to the Ravens is bad per se, but the way it's happening isn't exactly building anyone's confidence about the team.
I feel like this is another example of Bill O'Brien and the Texans may very well win that division.
But is anyone going to be
And no
feel
one's
good about
confident
it?
at
Yeah.
all, right? Yeah.
They've been 4-1 the last 5 weeks, but it didn't show today against the Ravens at all.
No.
And the Colts,
Man.
with them hanging in there and 6-4, tied for the lead, and this is after Andrew Luck just abruptly retired before, like right before the season began.
Right.
So, I mean,
I've seen
Frank Reich doing a great job with this back up against the wall. Although I think this division so far has played out exactly as we speculated.
Yeah, I believe
predicted.
so. And it's interesting because here you've got, Deshaun Watson is incredible. Jacoby Brissett I believe, has proven himself to be a worthy starter. Like, I don't know that he's a top guy,
right.
but he's their guy moving forward, and they signed him to an extension and all that stuff. But, the Jaguars, I think Nick Foles will be positive for them in a little bit, but the team didn't look all that great today. But what does Tennessee do moving forward? I saw people saying, like, if they finish the year strong, like, Tannehill could be the guy there moving forward. At least, like, because they're not going to have to pay him like crazy, and they're probably not going to win to be in a spot to be in the top 10 to be picking at the quarterback.
You either have to use draft capital to move up and get someone else, and maybe someone drops to them. Maybe someone like, because I know it sounds crazy now, but one of Burrow, Tagovailoa, or Herbert could fall. Like, we've seen quarterbacks tumble a little bit. If the Titans sit between 15 and 20, they could take one of them.
Don't forget, and I know this sounds crazy right now, but like, Chase Young could go number 1 overall. Like,
yeah, it depends on who's picking.
Right, but like, you look at it, man, he's unbelievable.
Jets,
right?
Maybe even the Cardinals. I think the Bengals are going quarterback. They just benched Andy Dalton, and Ryan Finley's not the answer.
No, yeah, you got to there.
So the Bengals are drafting a quarterback. Who's it going to be? I don't know. And the injury to Tua, what does that do to his stock? What if he'd shock everyone and decide to return to Alabama? After he heals. Right. I don't know. We'll see. I doubt it. I don't think that's going to happen, but, we've seen other things crazy like that happen. So let's finish the AFC and talk about the West. This one, I think, has a few surprises in it. Yeah. One, actually, I would say 3. The top 3 teams all sit there are surprising. One, the Chiefs are on top, but not doing it in dominant fashion, looking downright bad at times.
Oh, defense looks terrible.
Defense just
and offense,
bad.
They can't protect Mahomes, so he's getting beat up every week.
And, Mahomes missed, did he miss 2 or 3 games?
I think he missed 2.
And there was a bye week in there, too. So, Chiefs are on top at 6-4, but right behind them are the Oakland Raiders, who are another surprise, but in the positive for them.
Much better than
much better this year. Probably have the offensive rookie of the year in Josh Jacobs.
And you look at what they've overcome, like, drama-wise in the offseason with Antonio Brown and all that stuff. Yeah, the Raiders are in a prime spot here.
Now, statistically speaking, if you go by the net points theory, that if you finish at a 0, meaning you score as many as you give up, you should finish 500.
Right.
There's an extrapolation theory in there, like a Pythagorean thing in there. So right now the Raiders are above 500, but have given up more points than they've scored. So you would think that they would regress to the mean eventually.
And they very well might, because I feel like the Chiefs the last few years I feel like the Chiefs even like last year had this model where the defense wasn't great. They were just outscoring people. Yeah. And the defense got good enough. Like, the defense was improved.
And they just couldn't get a stop against the Patriots in the AFC Championship game.
And they had one, but then a bad roughing the passer penalty, and then they had another one, and the guy lined up off sides.
He's now in San Francisco.
Right. So, like, yeah. And you're not going to stop the Patriots 3 times in one drive.
Right.
So,
so the Raiders, I kudos to them. I think they finish 8-8. That's my expectation for them, which I think is an improvement over last year and expectations for this year. The Chargers have been a huge disappointment, but they've outscored their opponents by 13 points and sit 2 games under 500. We see this with the Chargers all the time.
Yep.
So
finding ways to lose games.
Yes, but I honestly expect them to start to go on a little bit of a roll here, because it seems that they take the first 2/3 of the season to find their footing, and then they'll go on a little run. Is it too little, too late? We'll find out. So they're 4-6. I wouldn't be surprised to see them finish at like 9-7. Right. That would not surprise me at all. Broncos, maybe today's.
See, and this is one too where I thought they were going to be better. I thought they were going to be a lot better.
They're losing now.
But then,
weren't they up 20-0 at one point?
They might have been, yeah.
So, well, okay. So the Broncos have become the Broncos again. They're going to drop to 3-7. You think Denver does have the ball with 3 minutes to play in Minnesota, but they were harassing the Vikings on their home field, and they have now imploded, and the Vikings now lead that 27-23. But I didn't expect much for the Broncos this year. I can't remember if I picked them or the Raiders to finish last in that division, but like Joe Flacco wasn't the answer. Like
I thought he was going to be good enough because I thought Vic Fangio was going to reignite that defense, and the defense hasn't been great. They haven't been terrible, but they haven't been great. Certainly not dynamic, and the offense has been bad. And now Flacco's on IR, and shocking, they have a terrible quarterback situation in Denver where John Elway, the only good quarterback move he's made, and he's made a lot, which tells you he's not making good ones, is Peyton Manning wanted to go there. Well, surprise, so. And an extension of that, Adam Gase is looking like, hey, you were really good that one year you were the coordinator for Peyton Manning. Like, oh, maybe there's a bit of a correlation there, but
yeah, well, it hasn't worked out with him after those years in Denver. All right, in the NFC now, in the NFC East, we have the Cowboys who are holding on to an 8-point lead over the Lions right now, but there are 4 minutes to go. Dallas does have the ball. If they hold on, they'll move to 6-4 with the Eagles game pending against the Patriots. I would say that's probably a loss for the Eagles. I would think it is in Philly.
You don't have to tiptoe around that.
It is in Philly though, so you never know.
I did see a thing today that said 70% of bettors are putting money on the Patriots for that one, but more than half of the professional bettors are putting money on the Eagles on the one. Now that doesn't mean that the Eagles will win.
Right? What's the spread? Do you know?
I don't know. I think it might be
5?
like 6.5 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so neutral or in New England, it's closer to 10 then.
Right. Which I think is fair. Like, I know they don't have a lot of wide receiver threats, but Eagles haven't proven that they can cover anybody.
Well, up until 2 weeks ago. Well, 2 weeks ago, right now, people were talking about how this could be the best New England team that they've had because how good the defense was, and then they got shredded against the Ravens, and now no one's talking about that anymore.
Because they also, at the same time they looked at it, they have a good win against the Bills, but outside of that,
who have they played?
Right. They beat the Steelers, who aren't as good as everyone thought they were. Now they beat them with Big Ben, but
for some of the game.
Yeah, but so now. They still only have one loss, and you can only beat the teams that you play. But
right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We see that in college football all the time too. So in the NFC East, Dallas is going to be in first place at 6-4. If the Eagles lose, they'll sit there at 5-5. It's a 2-team race. The Giants are bad. The Redskins are worse, which I think we called, by the way. Yeah. I think we had Dallas, Philly 1-2.
I thought the Giants would be better than they are.
We thought the Giants would be better, but we said the Redskins would be the worst team in that division. So we hit that.
I saw this question a couple weeks ago. Giants and Jets, one, both, or neither have their coaches back next year.
Well, the Redskins already fired their coach. So.
No, sorry, just the Giants and Jets.
Oh, I thought you said Washington. I thought you said Redskins and Jets. I may have misheard you. Giants or Jets. I think the Jets bring Gase back unless after this, if beating Washington, getting your 3 wins, if from here on out they lose every game, including a second one to the Dolphins, that would be in New York. Then maybe he goes, but I don't think it's going to happen. They were pretty excited about his hire, and there've been some dysfunction there, but that's a weird organization.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's fine with me if they want to just continue to be weird, dysfunctional. But do you think they get rid of Shermer in New York though? The Giants.
If you only win 3 games, how many did they win last year?
2 or 3, I think.
Right. I don't
know. I
don't know. That
I
it's the answer,
tend to preach patience when it comes to.
I agree.
In college, I want 4 to 5 years for my coach, and in high school, in NFL, I want 3.
Right.
So I really think that Shermer should get another year, especially now that he'll have Daniel Jones under center for the majority of his rookie year.
Yeah.
Saquon's been beat up this year. You got to give them more talent, and I just don't think it's
Their
there.
line
so
is terrible.
they just haven't been good. So in the NFC North, Packers are surprising us. I think you would agree with on that. Other than their future game against the Chargers a couple weeks ago, right? They've looked pretty good, sitting at 8-2. Vikings maybe a little bit of a surprise too, doing better.
Dalvin Cook having a great year.
Yeah, except for today. Although maybe that's changed since they started to come back against the Broncos.
Since they decided to play.
Yeah, since they decided to show up.
Bears huge disappointment.
Bears huge disappointment. We thought they'd win the division again.
So with Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson playing against each other in the Ravens and Texans game, people were showing highlights of the big Clemson-Louisville game from a few years ago. And so I goes, imagine watching this game and saying, no, I think we'll pick Mitchell Trubisky as our quarterback. And there's a lot of that because he was picked ahead of both of those guys who are both having really good seasons and careers, I guess you could say so far. Yeah. And Mitchell Trubisky is struggling.
For a while, I thought the Lions were going to be a surprise in this division, or maybe in the NFC
like
for 3-0-1. Yeah, and something like that.
Or
but they've suffered, because they've been 1-4 in their last 5. Yeah. So they were 2-1-1. They suffered that tie to the Cardinals in the first week, but they were looking good. They had an upset win, and then they had a close loss. I was like, oh, that don't count that against them. But now Stafford's out and maybe out for the year. They're still playing well, but they're not getting the wins. So Detroit's probably the worst team in that division. Chicago, probably a 500 team. Minnesota and Green Bay are going to duke it out, quite possibly two of the better teams in the NFC reside in that division. Playing out not quite as we had predicted, but not really surprised by it either. In the NFC South, again, it's the Saints coming back to haunt me as it has been the last few years. I'm just going to die on that hill always and just continue to pick against the Saints. They did lose last week to the team I thought would win the division in the Atlanta Falcons. But this was just me kind of punching at the air at the beginning of the year, trying to do something different because I just feel like one of these years I'll hit. This is like me, Boomer, picking Eagles, Patriots in the Super Bowl like 4 straight years or whatever, and finally getting it right. This is me just always picking against the Saints, and eventually I will get that correct. But the Saints are the best team in the NFC South.
By a lot when you look at it. Yeah, the Falcons are not good. Because the Buccaneers are not good.
The Falcons may not be good, but they're about to win 2 in a row against the two of the teams that are sitting on top of the NFC South, destroying the Saints last week in New Orleans and beating up the Panthers today in Carolina.
I also look at the Panthers, and people like a month or so ago were like, easy. It's an easy decision. You get rid of Cam Newton, And I'm not saying that you don't, but I'm just saying after you look at what Allen's done the last few weeks, you're like, maybe that's not as easy. Like, I think people thought they were going to have like no drop off, or that it would be at least maybe even some people would probably argue that it was going to be a step up. And I'm like, it's not that simple. Like, I understand he played well for a few games, but
they were winning despite him, or in spite of him.
Right. They also have Christian McCaffrey, who was putting up historic numbers.
Had been an MVP candidate.
Right. So
still could be.
Right.
But, I mean, I think they'll come back to earth.
But as a running back on a 500 team, you don't have a shot at MVP.
Cam Newton, though, the situation surrounding Cam Newton, though, isn't just about the quarterback, the current quarterback. It's that his injury history and his age and his contract, he has 100%, next year left.
100%. And that's why I don't necessarily blame them for moving on, but, like, people who are like, oh, man, Josh Allen's just as good. Like, well,
Kyle Allen.
Sorry. Josh Allen, different one, and if you want to make that argument, that's fine. But
two different ones.
I was going to say that would be really weird. But with Kyle Allen, you're like, let's just tap the brakes on that a bit, Can
we just collect all the Allens on one team? Bring in Josh from both Buffalo and Jacksonville. Bring in Brandon from Denver.
Yeah.
And just have your quarterback depth chart be Josh Allen, Kyle Allen, Brandon Allen.
Get Marcus on a trade from the Steelers.
Yeah, so NFC South, I mean, a surprise, but probably shouldn't have been a surprise. I just couldn't go with the Saints again. They're on top. They're going to improve to 8-2 as they are beating up the Buccaneers 34-17 at the 2-minute warning. So Bucs will drop to 3-7. Atlanta's going to improve to 3-7 because they are beating, or did they beat? Is that game over? Why don't I see it? Am I blind?
Yeah, they shifted over because of the 4:00 games.
Did it end? Yeah, it ended. Atlanta beat Carolina 29-3. Baltimore beat Houston 41-7. So, yeah, I mean, New Orleans has a 3-game lead. I just don't see them catering there. So the Saints are going to win that division, I would think. So last one to cover, NFC West. This one is
Full of surprises.
different. I think we expected the Cardinals to be the last place team, but they're playing better than the last place team. Kyler Murray has been very good at times this year. He's also looked at like a rookie at times, but that's to be expected. But, you know, they continue to build. They'll be okay there. Rams, though, 5-4.
And playing against the Bears, a disappointing team we said. So, like, let's just I think I fully expect the Rams to beat the Bears tonight. Right. But, like, I wouldn't be stunned if the Bears won that game. You know, like, it wouldn't be a massive upset, but it would be an upset. But, like, if the Bears went, then the Bears would be 5-5, and so would the Rams. Like, talk about disappointing.
Yeah. The Super Bowl hangover, man, it's really hit them hard.
Now, to say that, like, the Eagles were the same thing last year. They were, like, right around where they are right now, and then they got hot and were able to make the playoffs. So the Rams certainly could. The thing for the Rams, though, is the Seahawks are darn good, and the Niners are good.
This is interesting to me because we talked about the net points and the regression.
Right.
The Seahawks have not been
that
beating
much
teams
better.
big.
No.
Like, they only have a 21-point differential, and people talk about their defense. They've given up a lot of points this year.
They have.
They have not been great. It's been Russell Wilson, the offense, surprisingly carrying them to 8-2. They're the first
Russell
team to
Wilson
beat
is having an MVP caliber season. That's the key.
So
it's kind of the flip from a few years ago.
Right,
He would have a solid year, but the defense
was lights out.
Full of if a defensive player were to ever have a chance at an MVP, they had multiple guys who could be MVP caliber defensive guys.
And now one of them is on the 49ers.
Right.
And I mean, I still wish he would shut up, but
never.
The NFC West is very interesting to me because I honestly think that you could see this come down to, I think the 49ers are going to pull away is what I'm going to say. I think even with their loss to Seattle last week to knock them from the undefeated perch, I think the 49ers are going to pull away. They've impressed me so far. I know at times Garoppolo hasn't looked great, but their defense has been playing so well.
Yes.
They added, I think, good pieces at the trade deadline. And, you know, people sing praises of the quarterback, and I think the 49ers, sometimes, you know, Jimmy's carried them to a win once, maybe twice, but it's been a team effort. You know, they had some bad luck against the Seahawks. I think San Francisco could be the best team in the NFC. I definitely think they're the best team in the West, even with the loss to Seattle. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me to see Seattle push them and easily get to double-digit wins. They should easily win 10 to 11 games. But
speaking of which, they're on bye this week.
Yeah.
The Eagles get the Patriots out of a bye and the Seahawks out of a bye back-to-back
good
weeks.
Good scheduling.
Yeah.
But this is very long-winded of me saying that I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rams maybe turn it around.
I believe I picked the Seahawks in the West. I'm going to stick with that.
You're going to stick with that. Yeah. I definitely picked the Rams.
I just think it's when you look at it, the Rams are disappointing. They're not out of it. Like, if they were to get hot, like, they could it could be a 3-team race, like, down the stretch here.
Right.
But it's just whatever happens in the West, it could be very interesting. Like you said, you think the Niners are going to pull away. Like, that could be interesting there, too, because, you know, Seattle is in a prime spot to still be a playoff contender. Rams are going to be scrapping to get in that playoff spot. You know, have a chance to go to 6-4 tonight. It's just interesting because the last few years, it seems like there's been one good team because Seattle hasn't been the same the last few years. I know they made the playoffs either last year or the year before, but like they haven't quite been the same as they were a few years before that. But it's interesting to kind of watch how that West may play out. That you could argue, is that the best division in football?
If the Rams turn it around, absolutely. All right. Before we finish, anything else to say about the West?
No, it's just I'm sticking with Seattle, but like I can't argue like the way it's trending. San Francisco has really handled the business, and that defense is really good.
Yes. So before we get going here, we have an email to discuss, but I do want to really quickly. We're not going to go through our whole divisions playoff. Let's just do Super Bowl.
Okay.
What is your Super Bowl pick? Just past the halfway point of the 2019 season.
I'm still gonna go with the Patriots in the AFC because I don't think, until I see otherwise, I'm probably going that way. And in the NFC, I'm gonna go with. This doesn't have to be the same. This isn't who I went with.
No.
Okay.
This is like
Okay.
what
Okay.
right now.
So-
if someone was like, predict the Super Bowl right now.
I'm gonna go with the Saints. I'm gonna go Saints Patriots. That's what I think it's gonna be.
All right. I'm going Saints over 49ers in the West, or excuse me, in the NFC. And I'm going Ravens over Patriots in the AFC. And I'm going Saints over Ravens in the Super Bowl.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
I think
That would be an interesting one because, like, I like Drew Brees, but I'd be all aboard that Ravens.
Well,
wagon.
yeah. At that point, like, I would just kind of be like, whatever. I mean,
No, I got you.
Thank you. It's not the Patriots. That's what I would be saying.
It would just be like a celebration. Imagine having a game where, like, I would be okay with both teams winning.
Right,
now.
yeah,
like,
it really wouldn't matter. So, speaking of the Patriots, we have an email from Pat's Van Rich, my uncle in Massachusetts. He says, "Welcome back, boys. This is week 10. Actually, I think it's week 11, but, maybe he wrote this.
Well, Pat's
last
had a
week.
bye last week, so
He didn't write. He just wrote it. So, this is week 10, and since your last broadcast, nothing much has changed. He's not entirely wrong about that. The Patriots still the best team in the AFC and probably NFL. I would argue relentlessly about that after what happened last weekend, but everyone's entitled to their opinion, even if it's a bad one. Miami is still close to the bottom and fighting for the first pick in the draft. I mean, he's not necessarily wrong, but the Bengals have something to say about that. The Eagles and the Cowboys are still trying to figure out who doesn't want to win the AFC East. I mean, we know who doesn't want to win it. That's the Giants and Redskins. But one of those two, Eagles or Cowboys, will come out on top. Now that covers our team, so here are some items I think you will talk about. Surprise teams. On the plus side, 49ers and Colts without luck. Anybody else want a former Patriot quarterback? I don't know. The Colts didn't look great with Brian Hoyer last week against my Dolphins, but on the negative, how bad are the Falcons? Well, 2 weeks ago I would have said they are very bad, but after the last two games, not as bad as the Bengals is what I'll say. The Browns not living up to the hype. Nailed that one. We were all aboard on that one at the beginning of the year. We talked about that at length. How about all of the new quarterbacks? Very fun, entertaining. Young quarterbacks are great for the NFL, and they should have another 2 to 3 good ones coming in 2020. So we talked about Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. Those are just a few, and a few of the no-name guys that are stepping up this year with injuries to the main starters have also been sprinkled throughout our conversation. Let's not talk about our fantasy teams, especially in our league. I completely agree because I'm about to lose to Nick. Have a good show. He'll be listening. He would be listening if this went through live. It cut out very early on, so he's going to have to listen post-show, but I already told him that because he asked. He's like, I can't find your show. I was like, it's not
I'm afraid
working.
he's going to be in a good mood, though, when he's watching it.
And Justin, looking forward to today's game, are you?
Well, as leading into that, not so much. I mean, I'm hopeful that the Eagles could pull off. Here's the thing. If the Eagles pull off this one, all right, you've got my expectations are sky high from there on out. The problem is, so I've been saying this for a while now. The Eagles need to survive to Thanksgiving, and then they have a shot from there on out. Because the schedule after next week, the schedule is favorable for the Eagles.
After December 1st, yes.
So this week they have
Watch
the
that
Patriots.
trip to Miami. I'm telling you.
I'm not counting it in the win column. I'm just saying if they want to be a playoff team, that's a game they have to win. But they won last week. If they could find a way, or they had a bye last week. Sorry, going into the bye, they beat the Bears. If they could find a way to beat the Patriots or the Seahawks, who they have next week, that would be huge, in my opinion. Tough to do. They get both of them in Philadelphia. That's huge. The Eagles go from, they had played, it might have been that Vikings game. The Vikings game that they lost, I'm not exactly sure. I think that was it. And then they came home against the Bears. Then they have a bye. Then they're home for the next two. They are not on the road for like a month, and that's when they go to Miami over a holiday weekend. I'm hoping there's a huge Eagles contingent in the crowd that day. But they have the Giants left. They have the Redskins left.
Those should
they
be
do have a
wins.
game against
Dallas.
Game against Dallas, the second to last week of the season. That could be huge.
That could decide the division.
Right. So, but the schedule is set up where if they can survive to Thanksgiving, they've got a shot. Now, in there, I have them needing to win this week or next week, so that
Yeah, they need to go 1-1.
at worst, right, that they'd be sitting there at 6-5, I guess, going into that Thanksgiving week. So if they can get to 6-5 going into Thanksgiving week, I think they've got a good shot to finish 4-1 and at least 4-1 and make the playoffs. But we'll see if that can happen. Otherwise, they lose to both the Patriots and the Seahawks, then they pretty much have to win out. Which again isn't out of the question. But if they lose both those games, like how confident are you that they're going to win all the games that they should win?
Yeah, they'd be with 2 losses, they'd be 5-6.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to
Right.
win.
So then they
out.
play the Dolphins, and then they play
Loss.
It could be. It could be. But we'll see.
All right, so we covered my uncle's email. We went through every division and talked about the highs and lows. We updated some of the scores from Week 11. We will be back next week. No, we won't. I'm sorry. We won't be back next week. I will not be around on Sunday next week, so we won't be here. We will be back to talk about the games on December 1st, which happens to be Eagles-Dolphins Day. So
Right.
that'll be fun. So we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about the NFL Week 13 in all its glory, and we'll be in the month of December, the best month of the year. So,
It's up there.
well, it's not even debatable. It's true. So, all right. Well, that wraps up episode 285 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. It was great to be back. Thanks for joining us. Be ready for more football throughout the month of December and January from us. And then we'll have some fun once the Super Bowl wraps up and we celebrate 9 years of the show. And at some point in 2020, episode 300. So until next time, he's Justin Raffoff, and I'm Joe Mays. Tune into the show every week, well, sort of, on Sundays at some time. Maybe 8:30, maybe not. We'll see. But until next time, thanks for listening, and enjoy your football Sunday.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Tune in every Sunday for the latest sports discussions from Joe and Justin. Each episode is available live
On Facebook Live.
and can be downloaded or streamed on iTunes and SoundCloud. You can interact with Joe and Justin on Facebook and Twitter, and stay up to date with the guys at joemaysandjraff.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is part of the JMNJR Radio Network. For more info, visit jmnjrradio.com.